Hello everyone, Michael Bretti here from Bretti Musical Instruments. I've got a really exciting, very different video for this edition today. Something that I have not done in the past and something that I hope to do more of. In that this is my very first instrument unveiling of an instrument that's not a vessel flute, and also the very first instrument of my new historical replica series, where I will be going over and exploring and unveiling all different types of historical builds of very rare, very niche, very unique historical instruments, all through the ages, through all different parts of human culture, and adding them as part of my standard offering as I move forward. So without further ado, I'd like to give a first look and listen to the very first batch of Bretti Musical Instruments replicas of the 1,000-year-old Jorvik Panpipes. So over the course of this video, I'm going to be diving into the background of this instrument, take a look at the history of the instrument, what I've done for this particular replica, and some of the things that are maybe different for my replica over some other ones that are out there that have been done in the past. Give a look at all the instruments here with me, as well as sound samples and some song demos. So before we get into the actual instrument itself, just as kind of a background to what led up to this, over the past 2 years, I've been working on a number of vessel flutes, so primarily wooden shun and wooden inline and now pendant ocarinas. So I've been developing tons of new sizes, tons of new keys, exploring a lot of things that really haven't been done with these instruments that much in the past. And during the Boston Early Music Festival last summer, I had the chance to really become immersed in early music, talk to a lot of makers of historical instruments, and get a feel and taste for historical replicas. So historical replicas of string instruments, of wind instruments, and something during that event really clicked for me. Not only wanting to push forward and immerse myself more in these types of events, and wanting to be kind of take this to the next level, but also start exploring some historical instruments. So after that, I started looking into a lot of historical different instruments from early music, so from Baroque and Renaissance eras, revisiting a lot of stuff from Asian cultures that I've looked at in the past, and branching out to a whole different bunch of different instruments. And based on the tooling and the tools that I have available to me, started looking at instruments that I could replicate. Now, one of the big things for me, one of the big limitations is that I do not have a lathe. So all my instruments have to be non-lathe based. So that immediately rules out a lot of bored instruments. So instruments that you'd have to bore on a lathe. But there are a lot of historical instruments that don't require lathes at all. And I've worked out a lot of processes myself for other instruments like the ocarina, like the shun, that have allowed me to explore these instruments. And there are tons of instruments that I've now been exploring more of to leverage the tools and the skills that I have to bring with what I've kind of specialized in replicating these types of instruments. So since then, I've been looking at tons of different replicas, tons of different historical instruments. I'm now working on at least half a dozen very unique, very unusual historical instruments, again, from all different ages. This is actually my most recent development out of the historical replica series, but is the one that I actually kind of finished first. And because of that, I was able to actually have this as kind of a special edition for the upcoming New England Folk Festival, literally in a couple of days. So now let's get into the instruments. So the Jorvik Panpipes are again, 1,000-year-old Viking panpipe. There's only one ever discovered, and this was actually uncovered during a very famous excavation. So this excavation was started in 1972 by the York Archaeological Trust, where they started digging in the site of the Lloyd Bank in York in the UK. And during this dig, they uncovered a massive trove of artifacts that really gave a new and exciting insight into life during the Viking era, which had not really been seen before. There's lots of fragments and stuff of Viking culture found here and there, but I think this was like really the first major archaeological dig that really found so many artifacts from that time period in kind of a localized area that really shows all aspects of life during the Viking era. So there's just tons and tons of artifacts, literally tens of thousands of artifacts that was found within this dig site. And many of them were really well preserved because of the conditions of the soil. They were the soil conditions allowed things to be preserved very well. Everything from food to even bacteria to waste to the artifacts to wood, bone, all different types of things. And from the musical perspective, there were several bone flutes, bone whistles that were uncovered, but also this single wooden panpipe. Now, details of this can actually be found, and I have it with me. So for this particular development, I actually went out and I bought a copy of the Excavations at York, the Viking Dig by Richard Hull. This book actually goes over the entire history of the dig, has all the pictures, all the different things that were found throughout the dig, tons and tons and tons of different artifacts, how the dig evolved, and is just a very fascinating thing from the archaeological standpoint. You can actually kind of see on the back cover here a look at the dig site. So the dig site itself, I think, was about 9 meters deep. So many, many layers of soil and preserved artifacts that were excavated during this dig for a period of almost about 10 years, from the early 70s to the early 80s. This dig was going on at the site in York. In this book, they actually have the very accurate reference drawings of the Jorvik panpipes. Again, there's only one discovered, but they were remarkably well preserved. The original panpipes were made from European boxwood. And I believe the boxwood itself, I read somewhere, it was about 200 to 300 years old, that piece that was used. So the piece that was used for these panpipes was from a very old, very aged, aged piece of wood. So you can actually see in the section about the Jorvik panpipes, there's just a very short section in one of the chapters, but you can actually see here some of the details of the panpipes. So they're actually very, very well drawn and documented. This is not the full scale, but they do give the rough dimensions, and the dimensions are well known and found online. So from these initial drawings, from the known dimensions, I was able to scale and plan my models of the panpipes accordingly. Now, these panpipes, from what was found in the dig, they have 5 holes bored into a very thin, very small plank of wood. This plank of wood was about, I think, around 9.5 centimeters tall by about 6 6 point something centimeters wide and about 1.7 or 1.8 centimeters thick. So a very, very small set of panpipes. The final pipes, which you can actually see here, the final pipe was actually broken off. So there's only 4 kind of complete pipes, and a 5th one. We don't know if there's more pipes on the end, but from what was found and what it looks like from the recreated sketch, it seems plausible that it might have been just 5, especially given the size is very compact, very easy to hold in a single hand. So there's a lot of fascinating details that can be extrapolated from just historical drawings like this. And if you have very accurate drawings of an artifact, even very accurate pictures or scan, and you have just one dimension, you can extrapolate all the other dimensions to a very accurate degree. Now, when I was looking into replicating these panpipes, I found that there's a number of other makers of these panpipes online, so you can find these on Etsy and some other online Viking regalia stores and stuff like that. And they capture the general essence of the Jorvik panpipes, but they're not really super accurate to the actual artifact itself in terms of the shape and some of the other features, which I'm going to explore. And based on what I've seen with the ones that I've done, I believe that these are currently the most accurate representation of the actual Jorvik panpipes that I've seen out on the market. I have a whole bunch here in various woods, and I'm going to go over kind of the details and explore some of the subtleties of the design and what I put into the actual panpipes myself from these historical drawings. Now, unfortunately, there's not really much more on these panpipes. There's a few pictures of the real thing online from various artistic angles. And there's, of course, these original drawings and some write-ups and stuff on the instrument, but there really isn't a whole lot on the instrument. We do know that the key of the instrument, because this was actually playable, and based on the diameter and the depth of the bore holes, we do actually know what the tuning is. So it's roughly the key of A from A to E, so A, B, C, D, E, kind of rounding in a sense that if you actually look at the real depths and the real tuning, the actual historical tuning of these panpipes are going to sound very much out of tune. I mean, I have tested this myself. It does sound out of tune from the modern perspective, but you can still. But it seems like they do follow kind of that minor or that A minor scale. So, looking at the ones that I have here, I actually have 18 from this batch, and I decided to do it in 2 different keys. Now the woods here, I have 4 different woods, so I have a whole bunch in Aromatic Cedar, I have 2 in Castello Boxwood, 1 in figured maple burl, and 1 in Fiddleback Claro Walnut. So now looking kind of at the general features and shape and kind of getting an up-close look, comparing these to the actual drawings. I'm going to start out with just the basic Castello Boxwood one, just so you can see the shape and everything without being kind of distracted by colors and patterns and figures in the wood. One thing I do want to mention is Castello boxwood is not a true authentic boxwood. It is also known as lemon wood. However, Castello boxwood has very, very similar color, grain, working properties, and feel of real European boxwood. So much so that it is actually often used as a substitute for European boxwood for things like recorders. It is an absolutely amazing wood to work with. It is a relatively plain wood, but it takes an unbelievably amazing polish to it. It is very famous for holding exquisite details, and I will actually be using this wood a lot for a number of other historical replicas that I am working on as well. So to start with, taking a look at some of the features of the panflute. Now, if you look at other Jorvik panpipes that have been done by others in the past, you're going to see they have the same 5 holes. They're kind of in the same rough shape and size, but there's some noticeable features that are different. One of the major things are that all of these replicas are very simple in shape. They're very straight on the side, so they have just a straight cuts of wood, top and bottom straight, sides are straight. Oftentimes the top of the panflute is either completely flat or it's rounded on the top. The edges will be kind of rounded to make it a little bit more pleasing to hold, but kind of wide rounded edges. A lot of times the models are thicker than the actual panpipes. Because these panpipes are the historical ones are so thin, it can make boring to an accurate degree quite challenging. So it's easier to start with a larger piece of wood. And having just a flat top or kind of a rounded bevel on the top and the sides makes it easier to produce a whole bunch of these. And it is a very simple instrument. And when I had first started working on my replicas, I was going to initially go with a just very simple straight shape, and looking around and seeing others and what they've done, I got thinking, what is going to make my historical replicas stand out to what's already been done? What's going to make them maybe a little bit more meaningful? What can I do to contribute to the work of historical replication for instruments like this? And looking back at the historical drawings and looking at what's been done, again, I noticed a lot of details from the design that are missing in a lot of reproductions that have been done. So the major thing is the shape. So first off, we'll start with kind of the sides and the edges. So if you look at the original drawings, you're going to notice that the side with the deepest bore hole, so the side that's complete, is not straight. It's not straight all the way down, but it has a curve to it. So that's the first feature I decided to replicate here. So taking this, kind of orienting it in the same direction. The side itself is not straight, but it has that same type of rounded edge to it. I took the exact drawings of this. I scaled the template to the exact size, and I used that template to kind of replicate all the features of this. The next feature, kind of an important one, I feel, is the top. What I mentioned before is a lot of Jorvik panpipes out there are either flat top or kind of rounded on the top. But if you look at the actual historical drawing, you're going to see that if you look at it straight across, you're going to see kind of this ridge-like structure to it. And if you look at it from the side, you're going to notice that it is neither flat nor rounded at the top, but kind of a more triangular bevel to it. And what's fascinating is that even 1,000 years ago, the Vikings knew that adding a bevel and kind of a sharpened edge to the panpipes is going to make them not only easier to play, but gives it a very clean tone. And I actually experimented with this. I made some with a flat top, I made some with the rounded top, and and then I further refined it to that sharpened kind of triangle type top. And the difference is definitely noticeable, at least for me. So if you look at it from the front angle, you're going to see kind of that ridge-like structure. So that comes about by beveling the top to a more kind of a rounded triangular bevel. This actually does change the tuning a bit. So if you go to a flat top or a rounded top, and then you drill it out, and then you do the beveling, that tuning is going to change a little bit because you're changing the open area here. So that does affect it. And one of the really challenging things about fine-tuning panpipes of this size without adding any stoppers in the bottom or any wax or anything, so getting it right off the bat, just purely through subtractive manufacturing, so just drilling without adding anything back in, is that because the diameter of the pipes, because it's so small, these are about 8 millimeter diameter pipes, and because they're so short, changing the tuning can be significant for how deep you bore it. So even 1 millimeter difference in bore depth is going to change the tuning quite significantly. And I actually lost a number of these panpipes through the process of refining it. So working these is not just taking a block of wood, cutting it, drilling holes, rounding the edges. It involves pre-drilling all the holes with a pilot hole, then coming in with a final bit, drilling down part of the way, going back for a second drilling down a little bit further for each to get close to the tuning. Then I go in, I bevel the edges, I clean up the edges and everything, and then I do a final refinement drilling to carefully bring it into the tuning that I want. So there's a lot of steps involved, and then after all of those drillings and re-drillings, then I go through and I do the final extra shapings. So another feature that you're going to also notice, and one that I think is quite different with my model, that I think captures well with the original, is you'll notice on the other side, the side that is missing the pipe here. So this final fifth pipe was broken off, and you can kind of see here that how it looks like it was actually would have gone together, and you can see the dotted line of how it would be recreated, that lost section. It doesn't go straight down like the other side. So the other side's not straight, it's a little bit rounded here. So there's kind of that curve to it. This is not a mirror image of that. It goes down here, and then there's a little bit dip in and goes in like this. So I've actually taken the time to replicate that myself. So you'll actually see with these models is that you have that kind of dip. So it is straight on this side, and you have that dip in on the side. So I have taken into account kind of, again, how the author and the excavation team seemed like they would have replicated or rebuilt that again with a dotted line, so it's not just a straight edge up and down, but it kind of goes down about halfway and then tapers in like this. So I think that gives it a little bit more. Not only does that give it more of the feel of the original excavated artifact and replicates it more accurately to the historical artifact, but it also kind of makes it, gives it a little bit more interest instead of just being a kind of just a straight plank of wood with holes drilled in it. And it's actually kind of, maybe it was intentional, but I find when I'm actually holding it, it's very convenient to hold in one hand, and that ways you can kind of use that little indentation here for your hand, so you can actually hold it and play, and it kind of gives you this nice little edge to hold with one hand and play. So maybe the Vikings also accounted for that intentionally, based on, again, the dotted line and how it was looks like it was reshaped and drawn. It doesn't appear that that broken off piece extends down. It seems like this lower portion was in fact fully intact, and then there's this little bevel here that indicates that it wasn't broken here, but it was extended out and upwards like this. Finally, kind of another couple of small details that I've included. On the bottom, you're going to see that it is not straight across, but there's a little bit of a concave edge to it. So I have also included, even a small detail like that, I've also included on the bottom, there's that concave edge. So it's not straight across, but I've dipped it very gently, again, following that same curve as the historical replica. The hole for the neck strap is beveled on both sides. So that's also taken into account here. So you have the bevel for the strap hole for carrying the panpipes. And then finally, looking at the side profile, on the top, we have kind of that triangular, again, that kind of triangular bevel to the edge. But you'll notice on the bottom that it tapers quite steeply. So it's not just like a plank of wood, and actually the 1.7, 1.8 centimeters works out pretty nicely to about almost exactly half an inch. So I took half-inch wood, and again, a lot of times for what's been done in the past with other makers is that they've just rounded the top, rounded the bottom, rounded the sides, call it a day. But what I've done is, again, taken into account the curved bevels on the side, the curved features of the actual artifact on the side and the bottom, the triangular cut at the top, and then for the bottom side, you're going to notice that it is strongly tapered. And this actually makes it quite challenging in that if the final height is off even by a couple of millimeters, drilling out this final tube will actually punch through the sides because it's tapered so much that it will actually drill through the sides. And I actually lost several of these, finding that out. I was just off by just a millimeter or two in the total height. So again, taking into account all these different features, it increases the crafting time for this instrument quite significantly. Whereas if I was to just take a half-inch plank of wood of the right dimensions, I cut it out on all the sides, I round all the sides, and I drill the holes, that can be done pretty quickly. But doing all these extra shapings, all these little subtle features, tapering the bottom, tapering the sides more, doing this little bit of extra feature here, beveling, all these other features adds a lot more to the time of these instruments. So my Jorvik panpipes are more expensive than the ones that you're going to find from other makers, but my hopes are that my models very accurately represent the actual historical artifact to a physical degree. And I will say that moving forward, authentic actual boxwood is very challenging to get. However, I have found a source of real boxwood. It is not European boxwood like the original, but it is a very, very closely related species. So it is actually within the Buxus species that I can use for super historical replicas. So I will be doing even more authentic replicas out of actual boxwood, including more of the historical features as well as the historical tuning. Now, I mentioned the historical tuning because, again, doing tests with the actual historically drilled depths, to the modern ear, it's going to sound quite out of tune, and it makes it challenging to play. I will be offering historical tuning upon special request. However, to make this instrument kind of a little bit more accessible, I've decided to develop it in the modern A minor and modern A major scales. So for the modern A major scale, that goes A, B, C sharp, D, E, and for the modern A minor scale, that's A, B, C, D, E. Now, again, the original panpipes seemed like they were more minor. They weren't exactly the same interval, so it's going to sound a little bit odd, but the minor key is a little bit more indicative of what the actual historical panpipes are. Now, I decided in the process of this to also offer a major scale, as first of all, the major, in order to change from major to minor, it's just the center bore. So starting out a little bit shorter, it's major. If I drill down a little bit more, it becomes minor. If I drill down further and drill down all the other stuff, it changes to more the historical tuning. So the A major drilling is actually the foundation for the minor and the historical tunings. So I can start with that and I can adjust forward as needed. Another reason I decided to do both minor and major tunings is that this instrument has only 5 notes. And you might think, well, it's a 5-note pan flute, A, B, C, D, E. What can I do with that? It's limited. Yes and no. It is limited from the sense that if you want to play your favorite tunes, chances are it's going to be very limited. However, another instrument that I've explored and built for myself in the past is the traditional 5-string consola from Finland. That also is tuned in the major and minor scales. And I have found in learning that instrument myself, while it can be limited from the sense that you're not going to be able to play tunes that you already know, it forces you to get very creative in exploring different timings, different rhythms, and really forcing yourself to think outside of the box of your already kind of preconceived notions of songs that you already know. So with that simple 5-string consola with just 5 notes, it's a horizontal zither that you pluck. So the strings are on between a bar that goes across and tuning pegs. So you have those 5 notes for that particular instrument. But I found that even though there's only 5 notes, there's just such an incredibly diverse number of songs that you can play. And it really forces you to become a better musician by being more resourceful with a much more limited set of notes. And because I also, I like I think the major and minor scales both offer a very different feel, even for the same kind of range of notes. The songs will change completely differently. And I really like playing the major scale on the consola. And all those songs translate directly to the panpipes here. So I decided to offer, even though the A major scale is a little bit further from the historical representation of what the actual tuning was, it does offer a little bit more flexibility and a whole different feel, which we're going to actually get into as I demo the sounds of the instrument itself. So again, with me I have 9 major tuned ones, 9 minor tuned ones, and moving forward, upon special request, I will actually be doing historical tuned models as well. So that's kind of the major details of the build and how it's evolved and my approach to it. Again, I really wanted to bring something a little bit more that I haven't really seen with other replicas, either with people who have replicated them for their own studies like master's or PhD work, or people actually selling them as Viking props or artifacts, and that I want to capture as much of the essence of the original instrument as I can. And it added a lot of extra challenge, but I think it is well worth it, and I think it makes it a little bit more fun and interesting to have more of those historical features kind of embedded in the form itself. So with that all kind of wrapped up, now let's take a chance to actually look at each of the instruments. So I'm actually going to go through. I've been contemplating whether or not, when I do these kind of reveals, to go through all the instruments or just kind of take a sampling. And I figure for the time being now, I want to continue what I have done for my ocarinas and sample all the instruments just so you can hear every single one. And they play, what the tuning is, what they sound like, what they look like. So I'm going to go through first with the set of the Aromatic Cedar, and then I'll kind of get into the little bit more specialty ones down below. So the first 7 Aromatic Cedar ones on the top here are the major tuned panpipes. So kind of giving a look at each of these. This is what the first one looks like. So it has a bit of a nice knot here on one side, and on the other side, kind of nice clean grain with a bit of sapwood at the top. So I'll just do a sound sample of what the major one sounds like. So as you'd expect, a very different sound, and I'll play a minor one kind of immediately. So this is the first one of the second row, kind of looks like, so very straight, clean grain. So this is kind of the minor scale. So you can imagine it's going to be a very different feel, but even with the same notes and the same patterns and timings and tuning and timings, you're going to get vastly different sounding songs. So moving on, I'm just going to run through each of these relatively quickly. So we got the second major Jorvik Panpipe here. Number 3. So we got another nice little knot on the side and some more sapwood. And I found that I really love the inclusion of sapwood with these flutes. I think it adds a little bit of extra charm to the look. This is number 4 here. So a little bit of a tiny knot there with some sapwood, a little bit of sapwood and wavy grain on that side. This is number 5 of the set. So very clean, straight grain piece all the way through for this particular one. Now number 6, so another very straight, very clean grain piece, very similar to the prior one. And the last of the major aromatic cedar ones, this has a really beautiful piece of sapwood on the top. This is actually probably one of my favorites of the major aromatic cedars because of that sapwood. So now we're going to take a look at the minor ones. So I've already taken a look at the first minor aromatic cedar. So we're going to move on to the second one. So again, we got another clean, straight grain piece of aromatic cedar here. Now this is going to be minor, so a little bit different sounding. Got the third one here. So we'll look at the grain for this one. Aromatic cedar number 4 of the minor set. So another very clean, straight grain piece here. Now number 5, and what you notice is, again, these are really nicely compact, nicely really small, almost the size of a thin wallet. So it's pretty convenient. You know, it's nice. It's easy to flip around in your hands. So a fun little flute to take with you wherever and just play as you want. So this is what this one sounds like. Now number 6, a little bit of a different grain structure for this one. And now the final one of the set, again, I think one of my probably my favorite of the minor, because you have that nice bit of sapwood, little pockets of sapwood that kind of stands out. So this is what this one sounds like. Now, getting a chance to hear all of these side by side and played all together, I hope you get a sense for, I think, how closely tuned they all are in a set. Panpipes are not necessarily an exact flute, and a lot of times when you see professional panflutes or panpipes, they will have movable plugs in the bottom, or other times they can be plugged with wax or filled to adjust the tuning. For obvious reason, there's no stoppers on the bottom of these because that's not how the original was. And I do not fill any of these. None of these are filled with wax to compensate for any missteps in tuning. And again, even 1 millimeter off in the drill depth is going to completely change the tuning of a tube. So getting all of these instruments in the major and the minor to be very precisely tuned all together very closely without any additional corrections is very challenging. And that also adds to the time involved in making these. Again, panpipes are not going to be exact, so they're still going to be tuned to itself. So it's not going to be exact concert pitch because you really can't do that. And you're going to find that even in different temperatures and conditions, the tuning will fluctuate. And again, because those tubes are so small and thin, various factors will actually change the overall bulk tuning. And actually what I found during some of the early batches of tuning these is that when I went through and I drilled the holes, the heating, as the wood got heated up as the bit was going through, the tuning was sharper. So I'd go and I tune it exactly to pitch, and then I'd set it aside and I'd do other stuff. And then when I come back and play it, everything was flat. And I'm sitting there like, I can't possibly be going crazy. I know that I tuned this very precisely. I got the depths right. And through some extra trial and error, I discovered that the heating of the bore through the drilling actually changed the tuning enough that it was throwing me off after the panpipes cooled. So that's also part of what goes into all the extra drilling steps. So the pilot hole to make sure that it goes straight, the first boring, the second boring, and then the final finishing boring. All of those steps are to ensure that the pipes, when they've cooled down to the atmospheric temperatures after drilling, they are all relatively within tune of each other, and they don't deviate as they cool down from that initial drilling. So I've had to account for that in making these, because these are very thin wall instruments, thin bore instruments. So it can be quite tricky to get these precisely right, again, without adding any fillers in the bottoms or anything. Also, another thing that I want to reiterate here is, and I've said this with my ocarinas before, is that softer woods do not in any way make for inferior flutes. And you might think, cedar is very soft. It's a soft wood. So you might think, it's going to be too muffled. It'll be, it won't sound as loud. But that's clearly not the case with these instruments. The aromatic cedar, even for these panpipes, it's very bright. It's very clear. It actually has a good bit of volume to it. They are not quiet in any sense, and they're probably louder than my ocarinas. Definitely louder than the shun that I make. So they are, they have that high pitch. They have a crisp tone, and the woods actually do have a little bit of an effect. What I do is, because these are all very thin walls, thin bores, I do go through and I seal the inside and the outside with the same varnish, several layers, probably 5 or 6 layers of varnish on the inside and on the outside to seal that, so that way they are less affected by moisture, the potential for cracking. And one of the challenges with this is that, especially with figured woods, if there's any voids or checks in the internal structure of the wood itself, whereas that's not a problem at all for ocarinas, that will actually completely destroy the flute. I found that, especially drilling out, working with some of the burls and the figured woods, there are some hidden pockets and voids in the wood that, if there's any of those deviations in there, that particular drilled pipe will not play. Same thing if it develops a crack in it, the pipe won't play. There are ways to repair this and fix it, but I do my best, at least with the wood selection that I have, to make sure that the wood is free of those internal defects, and to seal everything so that it is a little bit more resistant to those changes. Again, it's wood. It's a natural material. It could always crack. It could always, have those issues over time. Even the best professional-made recorders or other woodwinds will have those issues, but they are things that can be mitigated and potentially repaired. But again, like any of the other woodwinds, any other wooden flute in general, just pay attention. Don't bring it out in freezing cold air. Don't dunk it and soak it in water. Don't leave it in a super hot car or in the freezing cold. Just take care of the instrument, and it should last you years of playing. So now that we've gotten through the aromatic cedar models, I'm going to get into some of the other models here. So these are a little bit more expensive, a little bit higher end woods. So the first one here is the major tuned Castello boxwood flute. So we're going to see here just a very straight, clean, simple grain. Has an absolutely unbelievable polish, unbelievable feel. It is definitely noticeably heavier than the aromatic cedar. It's more dense, much harder wood, but has a really amazing feel to it. Castello boxwood is actually quite expensive, even though it's a pretty unfigured wood. It's actually quite expensive, and I do have a bunch of this that I'm going to be using for a lot of other builds, but it's a little bit in short supply for what I have. So I hope to be doing a lot more out of Castello boxwood, as well as actual authentic boxwood. Again, Castello boxwood is not real boxwood, but it is a very, very physically close substitute for those to get kind of the same feel and look. So this is what the major one of the Castello boxwood sounds like. Next, we're going to take a look at the minor Castello boxwood. So again, very, very similar look to it. A very clean, straight grain, just absolutely beautiful polish. Minor scale now. Next, we're going to get into kind of one of the specialty ones for this unveiling. So for the specialty major scale, I decided to make the lighter figured maple burl one, the major scale. So you can see just really, really beautiful burl. I had two others of these that I was going to make, but unfortunately, because of the internal voids and some of the cracks and checks in the natural burl, some of the pipes failed. This one ended up being clean enough that it just voiced beautifully. I'm going to actually do some experimental rework of the pipes to see if I can get the other burl ones working. So hopefully those will be available at a later date. So the burl for ocarinas and shun, not a problem at all. For the panpipes, it's more challenging, but it can be done with the right piece. So you can see just absolutely beautiful polish, absolutely really stunning figure, really cool looking little panpipe. So this is what this one sounds like. And finally, last but not least, probably one of my personal favorites of this entire collection is the specialty minor panpipe. So this is made out of some absolutely beautiful Fiddleback Claro walnut. You can see just the incredible rippling iridescent grain. I've used this a lot for ocarinas. It makes a stunning ocarina. It just makes a stunning instrument in general. Just absolutely beautiful polish, absolutely beautiful figure, really rich, really nice dark color to it. This is what this one sounds like. So you can tell that all the instruments, whether it's a softwood, whether it's a burl, figured wood, very hard, straight, heavy grained wood, they all have a bright, clear projection. There might be some subtle differences in the sound based on the woods, but largely they will all sound relatively similar, but the aesthetic of them, again, is very different. The harder woods do take a much nicer polish. I think getting the polish for the aromatic cedar is a little bit more challenging, but for the harder woods, they polish up absolutely flawlessly. They finish really beautifully. But overall, all of them fun instruments to play, fun instruments to work on. I've got a ton more in planning. I've got some really exciting new woods I'm going to be developing these with. So a bunch more pretty cool figured woods. So now that we've kind of gone through all the instruments, kind of gone through the background, the history, now there's going to be a few just kind of song demos again. Because the range is limited, it's not necessarily going to be any conventional songs, but kind of, again, one of the nice things about having a very limited range is it forces you to get over kind of preconceived notions of following particular songs or something, and to kind of explore your own voicing, and explore the limitless possibilities with very, very limited tuning. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to play a number of just really short improvisations, improvisation on one of each of the woods for the major and minor scales. So please enjoy some of these different improvisations on these Jorvik panpipes. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this special unveiling. Again, this is the first of many of my historical replica series works. So this is my take on the 1,000-year-old Jorvik panpipes. Again, I've tried to capture the physical details of the original excavated artifact as much as possible from the original sketches and drawings from the dig site. I will offer 3 different tunings, two modern tunings, so a modern A major and a modern A minor tuning for people who like this type of instrument and want to play around with something that's a bit easier to play and sound nice on. And then for special requests, I will offer the actual historical tuning with the option of real boxwood as supplies are available. But again, there's a whole bunch of woods coming. This is a fun one. It's nice to kind of break away from constantly trying to bang out lots of different ocarinas and stuff. So it's a nice kind of segue into historical replication with a relatively simple historical replica. Still a lot of little details in it, but overall kind of a fun build to explore and work on. And because of its size, I can look at offering a lot of really fun and fancy woods. One thing I do want to mention is that all of these, like the pendants, will come with the neck strap as well as a carrying pouch. So I didn't have the neck straps on these for this video just because it's much easier to handle and show a whole bunch at once without them. But for the actual delivered ones, they will be available with that neck strap as well. Now, these instruments will be on display for sale and purchase at the New England Folk Festival, literally in a couple of days. So you can, if you're in the area in Marlborough, Massachusetts, you can check these out in person. After the showcase, for anyone who's interested in them, they will be available for anyone to purchase on the shop. And if you see one of these that you like now and can't attend the showcase, send me a message, and like the ocarinas, I will put you on the reserve list for the particular instrument if it doesn't sell during the show. There's a lot more historical replicas to come. So if you want to follow along, there's videos here. There's Instagram. There's the Bretti Musical Instruments Facebook. I've got more information I'm adding with each new instrument on the Bretti Musical Instruments website. And I'll have more song demos and just general demonstrations of playing these instruments in different woods and different keys, or different, the major, the minor, and the historical as I work out more models. So with that, I want to thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.